I think in some ways I've like reflected on it is an imperfect process, and if I like look back, part of me wants to like put not a memo, hate memo culture, put together a like this should like not happen in the future, or maybe it should, and here's how it should be set up. But I do think the like power in the process is that it's like one of the most multiracial cross-class teams that I've been on, people who are volunteers in the movement, people who have high leadership in the movement. And I think if there was like any person or group of people who could like put this type of team together, it was the people. I know like Aru was the Frontloading coordinator and put the process together. Yeah, I just think it's like pulling on a ton of different experience from people. Like JP is in Miami and like sees firsthand the impact of the climate crisis in Miami. There's like Lily who's from Kentucky and like grew up in Appalachia or like has family in Appalachia and like has the experience of what it means to organize like young or like white rural folks around the Green New Deal and like what does and what doesn't work. And I think again like imperfect process, and I like feel the people who are like, how did this team come together? Like the movement didn't get to vote or say, and I'm like, yeah, and hopefully we can like put together the structure so that this never happens again in the future. Or there's like a way more democratic process or like stronger, better process that involves the movement on this. But
we're really different people, like, which I think is one of the biggest assets. And I actually think goes to your last part of the question is I actually do think we're pretty like representative of the movement in terms of like ideas and thoughts, you know, like not fully, there's 11 people, you totally can't do it, but we like argue all the time about things and have really differing opinions. And I think one of the most interesting things has been like when we decide that like personal beliefs and personal things of ours are great and maybe not what makes sense for Sunrise, and that like Sunrise needs to go in a different direction. And it's been really cool for us to kind of like work together and hold each other and like how do we make the best decisions for Sunrise as our full human selves, bringing in all of our like history and background and being like, okay, this is what I fully believe. I really think this. And the way we finally get there in the end is having Sunrise do this thing now. And it's just been like really cool to like work together with so many people who I like didn't know before and who have like totally different lives than me and who differ on opinions than me, and like us being able to really create something really beautiful together.
Our team is one of the most diverse in the movement, like along all lines, geography, everything. We're just like so different, and that like shows up kind of comically sometimes in our like interactions. And we do a lot of deep thinking together and get into some conflict together and do a lot of learning and reading and all of this. It's a lot of like really cerebral kind of thinking with people who are very different from me, and it's really challenging and inspires a lot of growth, and I'm excited to share that with the movement.
I think there has been a little bit of conflict around race and class, but not in the way that is like, I've been thinking about being a black woman, grew up like working class, lower middle class, and it's really interesting because I think like in some ways have existed in a like class neutral society where growing up it was like everybody was just black and teachers, or your parent worked at the airport, and there's never this like class lens to it. But I feel like coming on the Frontloading team, it has been much more prevalent, like the intersection of race and class. And I think there have sometimes been like clashes around the like role of Sunrise in mutual aid, or like the role of Sunrise in changing dominant institutions. And sometimes I'm like, the role of Sunrise is not to be the role of the federal government and to provide for every person in Sunrise. And there are people who have different class backgrounds that are like, no, I like disagree. I think we need to be taking care of our people. We need to take care of our people more and like focus less on some of the other like strategy stuff. And so I think there has been some conflict around that, but I think again, it's been good to have a team container where we can work through that and like not cancel each other and like understand at the end of the day that we're like committed to transforming the movement and like winning a Green New Deal, and like how do we come back to the unity that we have in that.
Last thing I want to say is we did lose 2 team members so far. We started off at 13, and that was really hard, and each person left for a different reason, but it did come within like 2 weeks of each other. And yeah, I think there was like, I think that could have been a moment that the other 11 of us like got really discouraged and were like, we can't do this, because we were a real team, the 13 of us, and it was like really sad and hard and heartbreaking. And there was a moment when we were together in our retreat, our first in-person retreat, when a lot of us met for the first time in Colorado, that we just really decided to stick together. It was like really clear. We all were like, no, I am in it with you together, and we were seeing this through. And it was probably one of the most powerful days of my life. And we were like, we are trying to build a youth social movement that will last and win a Green New Deal. And we're doing this thing for the next 5 years, and we are fully in it together, and we're not giving up on each other. And so I just like love this team, and like, yeah, I like feel like I can call them all family.
So at our first retreat in Denver, it was the first time we were meeting all together, and we like tried to dive right into things, and we're like, oh shit, we barely know each other. We've known each other, for all these months, but it's only been on Zoom. And yeah, diving like right into some heavy stuff, we got into some conflict, and it like got a little heavy, got a little hard. And we had to like pause, take a step back, kind of reevaluate things. And then like we did a lot of relational time, and just like got closer and whatnot. And then like towards the end of the retreat, we just like banged out all these decisions, and we're like, oh man, we can do it. We can make decisions. We can fight about it, and everything's okay. And that, yeah, just like sitting in that room in Colorado, disagreeing and then making decisions was, yeah, really cool.
I think that the culture that we bake into this team is incredibly important, because it's the culture that, we want to replicate in 2.0. How do we have a movement that engages in conflict productively? How do we cultivate a movement that understands that the world is a little fucked, and we carry a little bit of that fuckery into our lives, into the way that we express ourselves, into the way that we relate with each other. And we've done a good job of that so far, and I think we're actually doing the work now of going beyond the relational period where we have fought and loved each other and so on, to actually map out how those experiences that we've had on this team, tackling on these subjects, are going to come up with our movement, and therefore how we can front load a strategy or a culture or a structure to help us overcome the ways that conflict is inevitable. And so I'm hopeful of that. It will be messy, it always has been, but we'd be lying to ourselves if we thought that it wouldn't come up in the next iteration of Sunrise.